You're listening to AM 970, The Answer. And now, Reaching Out with Gregory Floyd, the president of Teamsters Local 237.
Welcome to another edition of Reaching Out. I'm Gregory Floyd, president Local 237. Our very special guest for the first time is Dalvanie Powell. Dalvanie Powell is the president of the United Probation Officers Association, representing more than 800 probation officers in New York City's 5 boroughs. The first African-American woman to lead the United Probation Officers Association. She has dedicated her 30-year career in probation to making a difference in the lives of New Yorkers seeking a second chance. In 1987, Dalvanie's career started as an investigative probation officer trainee in adult services. Over the following decades, she has worked her way up the ranks before, in 2008, being promoted to supervising probation officers for the Bronx Family Services, where she supervised officers in multiple units. Dalvanie has been deeply involved in the United Probation Officers Association since 1990, when she was appointed to serve as a union delegate. Since then, she has served her union in a number of different capacities before being elected president in 2016. Dalvanie, welcome to Reaching Out. Now, very few people understand or know about probation officers. Today, we want you to take us step by step, first telling us what is a probation officer.
Okay, probation. Probation is an alternative to incarceration. Probation officers, like you said, I represent over 800 probation officers throughout the city. When a person gets arrested and they go through the system, people tend to think of the criminal justice system. They think of the police, they think of corrections department, they think of the judges and the lawyers, but for some reason they forget about a significant part of the puzzle, which is probation officers and the role that we play. So as I mentioned, probation is the alternative to incarceration. We're considered community corrections, like you said, also giving others a second chance at life. We supervise men, women, and youth who've made a mistake and got convicted of a crime. But when people also, when they do think about probation, sometimes they get us mixed up with, a lot of times they get us mixed up with parole. Parole is after a person's been sentenced to state prison. Probation is in lieu of. So when a person gets sentenced to probation, they're not just sentenced to supervision. In the front end of probation, there's an intake process. So we're like the front end of the criminal justice system. We do the intakes, we do investigations both in family court and in adult services. And then once a person is in the investigation stage, when they do the investigations, a recommendation is made to the court, both in family and in adult services. Also, we have supervision, investigations, intake. We also have, in family court, we have an adjustment unit, and we have in ICM, which is intensive community monitoring. We even do child support cases. We do a multifaceted of different, he's looking at me like, wow. We do a multifaceted of different tasks.
Now tell us about child support. How does
we
that
have
work?
officers, like if somebody's in delinquent of child support, we have officers who have to monitor those cases to make sure that the payments are being made. But overall, our main thing is public safety. Public safety is a probation officer's main role. So when a person is sentenced to probation, our objective is to reduce recidivism, victimization, and keep the community safe. So our motto is about changing lives, saving lives, and protecting lives. A probation officer, once a person is on probation, our goal is to try to get them to change their mindset, change the way they think, and there's different tools that we have in place to try to get that done. The caseload of a probation officer, depending on the unit that they're in, can range from, depends, from in adult from 45 to a whole lot more, to 100. And it depends on, in child and family court, depends on the unit. They can range from as low as 15 to 20 because they're in an alternative placement unit to much higher than that. Probation officers have to go out in the field. We're trained for 8 weeks, just like police and corrections and defense tactics and OC spray training, peace officer training, and we have to carry guns, and we have the authority to make arrests. We have units like our intel unit, who works closely with the police department in special detail assignments. We've made big drug busts along with the police and gun busts, and I have officers who go to other states to go pick people up on arrest, just like the police do. We have peace officer status.
So tell me, how do you become a probation officer?
If you become a probation officer, you have to have a college degree. You have to have a bachelor's degree at the least, and a bachelor's degree with some experience and a master's degree with no experience. But you can also come in on as a probation officer trainee. You can come in as a provisional level until entry until exams comes out, which is we have a lot of exams coming out now. So you have to have a college degree, and you have to have requirements. You have to have taken certain classes like criminal justice, psychology, sociology. Different requirements are required.
Okay, so you have to have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, or a master's degree, and you have to have psychology, sociology courses, criminal justice, and there's a civil service exam? Yeah. Okay. And then there's the hiring process.
And it's a hiring process.
So what department do you work for? Do you work under a department, or is there a probation department?
I work for the Department of Probation, New York City Department of Probation. Yeah.
And what other titles are in the Department of Probation?
So I represent probation officer assistants. I represent probation officer trainees. I represent probation officers and supervising probation officers.
Okay. And is there like social workers also involved in probation?
No. Okay. So let me say this slow. Probation is very unique in that we are like when you see the scales of justice, that's who we are, because we wear two hats. We have the social work and we have the law enforcement. Not downplaying either one, but we're considered law enforcement because within the criminal procedure law, we're the alternative to incarceration, right? We have to use our social work skills or tools in order to help an individual become a law-abiding citizen. At the same time, there's conditions of probation that we have to uphold by the courts, right? So the contract between an agreement between the probationer and the courts, whether it's family court or adult court. So there's a contract between these individuals and the courts. We have to make sure the law enforcement part comes in when we have to enforce that component, right? We have to make sure that they adhere to the conditions of probation. And unfortunately, if not, then there's, you might have to send the case back to court. But probation officers, we do everything we can not to have the person to go back to court. But if it comes to that, but there's several steps. And it also depends on the non-compliance. It's not that clean cut. It's not a cookie cutter. It's not that simple. Very complex.
So how does someone get involved with probation? In other words, what is the system that says, okay, you're now on probation? What does that consist of? How long is somebody on probation? Okay. What are the stipulations? Who regulates that?
Probation, let me see. Like I said, probation is the alternative to incarceration, and probation officers, and it depends on, I would say a person might get on probation because it might be considered a lower level, and then not necessarily, because we deal with rape, we deal with sexual offenders, we deal with sex offenders, we deal with people with robbed ones. It depends on it depends on how they fall, and we have these tools that we use to measure a person's eligibility to be on probation. At the end of the reports, probation officers make recommendations to the courts on whether we believe a person should be placed on probation or not, and it's up to that individual judge to decide whether that person is. We do assessment tools and stuff like that.
Now, how do you get the cases that you have to assess?
Well, the person gets arrested.
Yes.
And then the case is the individual. Let me take you to it. The person gets arrested, and let's say in adult court, a person gets arrested, and they might take a plea. They go to court. Most of the time, my cases after they have taken a plea. Once they take a plea, they'll go through the investigation process, which is when we do investigation reports, we go back. We go back to the person's life from the beginning, from childhood. We have the families involved in the interviews and anybody in the community that might have some influence on what their life might have been or could be going forward. So we do investigation reports. We do If there's a victim, we do a victim impact statement. If it's a victim crime, if it's not a victim's crime, naturally we wouldn't interview them. But we interview whoever might have some kind of impact. We go back to the school history. We go back to the legal history. We do the medical history. We do the physical and mental health. Every component of that individual, we have to prepare a report to the court, and then based on our assessment tools, we determine whether this person is eligible, and the crime itself, and then we determine whether this person is eligible for probation, not just probation, but also incarceration, or sometimes a split. Well, maybe, I don't know if we determine the actual split, but we make that determination of incarceration and probation, and then sometimes a person can get a split sentence, which means that this person can serve some of their time in corrections for under a year, like 4 to 6 months, and then the rest of their time can be on probation. In family court, the difference is that instead of going through arraignment, they go through the intake with the intake officer. The officer has just as much say as a judge, and that child will go through the intake, and they'll do assessment to determine whether this child case goes to court or whether that child case goes to court, or whether that child is released or go to one of our programs known as adjustment, which is a big thing now. It's a diversion program, and the child stays with a youth stays with the probation officer who is an adjustment for like 60 days, and they provide them with services. And if they complete the services, then the case goes away, case is diverted, and it's done. But if not, then the case goes back to court. It's so much to probation that I could be here for hours telling you how we function. So that's pretty much how it is. And all this is based on recommendations. Once a person is placed on probation and dealt, if they're placed on probation and dealt, then they go through the intake process. And then that intake officer determines the levels based on information before what part of probation they're going to go to. There's so many different components to us.
You're listening to Reaching Out. I'm Gregory Floyd, President Local 237. Teamsters. With me, our very special guest is Dalvanie Powell, and she is the president of the United Probation Officers Association, and we're here talking about the role of probation officers. There was just a new law that was just passed and took effect called Raise the Age, where there were a number of youth incarcerated offenders that was released from Rikers Island into the juvenile justice system to serve the remainder of their time in a less secure area. And the Department of Corrections was some of them were taken off of Rikers Island, about 250 of them, and placed into the youth facility. And there were at least 50 assaults the first week.
Yeah.
I lost count, and I know the probation officers play a role in there. What is your role in that whole Raise the Age law? Okay,
so there was a point prior to Raise the Age. We had officers who worked in Horizon that did the intake, but then when the Raise the Age came into place, my members was sent over to Crossroads to deal with the less offense. The kids were supposed to be less dangerous. So we're not in Horizon. But when it comes to Raise the Age, it's still developing with us. It's a working process, but they're starting this. Let me rephrase this. We've always dealt with 16 and 17-year-olds. Either an adult when they got sentenced to probation as 16 or 17-year-olds and they were treated as adults, or in family court when they came in at 14 and 13-year-old and they grew into the age of 16 and 17-year-old. So dealing with them is not new to us. But there's now going to be, and there now is a shift. So now the 16-year-olds are the first ones to roll out. And initially, the department, and we had discussions about our concerns about the caseload. Our concern was more the increase in caseloads. And now they're starting to see that the caseloads are starting to increase. And so you're going to see more caseloads in family court, right? And the biggest lean is going to be on that program. There's the unit called the adjustment unit, where you see they have more 16 and 17-year-olds going into those units to try to divert them out the system. Overall, we've always dealt with them. We've always dealt with 16 and 17-year-olds. But there's also been an increase in hiring of probation officers because of the increase in expected increase in family court. And we still have, but see, now with the Raise the Age, you have youth court. So the youth court it was implemented into raise age to determine, that court determines whether, also based on the crime that the individual commits, whether this individual is going to family court services or adult services. And so those areas have also been increased. So we have certain components and different units that have been increased or added on because of raise age.
Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about your function with the city. I understand you've also sued the city in court over provisional appointments, Article 78. Can you talk about that?
Not. All right. Let me clear. Not provisional appointments, but because the department has always promoted. This is for promotional reasons. Promoted from within supervisors and branch chiefs. I don't represent branch chiefs, but they're also known as administrative probation officers. But those are positions that are civil service exams, and they're promoted through taking an exam. But when there's not an exam, the department historically has always promoted from within. The reason that we had to file Article 78 is because after when they started talking about hiring supervisors from the outside, we sat down and we talked with them in labor management meetings on several occasions, just expressing our, us not wanting to happen. And no matter how much we talked about it, they still did it anyway. So it's not fair to my members who's been here and did their time. This is the kind of job you can't just walk in and just supervise somebody off the street. We're concerned about public safety. Then on top of that, our salaries is not the best salaries, which I'm sure you know about the other case we have as it is. So where's the motivation? The motivation to stay. Our turnaround rate, actually, it has gotten worse since this has come out. And you got people coming in, they love the job, but they don't want to, they can't stay because salaries are low. And then where's the growth? There's no growth. It's bad. It's real bad.
So where are you in that process?
We still have pending litigation. I can't really get into it too much as a vice attorney.
No.
It's
if it's
still
pending, it's pending. That's the answer. So, in other words, what's the makeup of the probation officers? What's the demographics?
I represent, like I said, a little over 800 probation officers and supervisors and POAs and POTs. We're predominantly female and people of color. Yes, so the other case, the one about the pay equity, that came about when I first became the president. I had to do I did it upon myself. I did a salary assessment, and when I looked at the salaries and the years of service that we put in, we wasn't reaching our top salaries.
Who did you compare?
I compared us to the probation departments in Westchester County, Nassau County, Suffolk County, and the other one.
That are predominantly male?
Predominantly non-color, people of non-color.
Okay.
And I guess, I'm not really sure of male, but people of non-color. And then I compared us to our own brothers and sisters here in law enforcement, corrections, police department. I even did, since they always include sanitation and fire department, and our salaries is nowhere near their salaries. And like I said, we never reach our top pay. So it's like chasing a carrot that was never going to happen. So
you mean the top pay that's in
right
the contract?
Yeah, right now the top salary.
You talk about the salary scale, the one that you have to get a merit increase. That's in every contract in every city.
The salaries for a probation officer can range as low. It starts depending if you have any experience, as low as $42,000, with experience $49,000, and the top salary is about $71,000.
And the only way you get that is it's a merit increase.
We didn't even get merit increases.
No, I'm just saying how you get it. It's a merit increase that has to be approved by your commissioner.
Right,
and it has to be approved through the Office of Municipal Budget, but it has to be approved all the way up.
Everybody else has it. We don't have a guaranteed top salary.
Yeah.
I mean, on paper, it's one thing, but there's no guaranteed. Like, the new people say, so when I do my orientation, so when do I get to the $71,000?
Yeah.
I can't tell you that because it never happened.
But that's every title in the city. Most of them have that top pay, and that's the question of every city employee.
That's false advertisement to me.
But it's not false advertising.
Yes, it is.
Giuliani put it in there. So if they have somebody outstanding, which they never come up with anybody, they give them that salary, that merit increase, which rarely happens. It happens maybe one or two people through the whole city, through the whole 300,000 workforce. get that increase. I've seen it happen maybe once or twice, but never on a large scale.
But
So,
now law
you're right.
enforcement, we're law enforcement officers, and
Yeah.
why is it that police is getting it, corrections is getting everybody else?
Well,
I mean,
they don't have that range.
Oh, okay.
It's not okay. I'm just going to throw a number. It's not 65,000 that this police officers are paid, and in the contract they can't make as much as 75. They don't have that in their contracts. So there's never a number that somebody cannot reach that everybody's looking at that they never get to.
Gotcha.
That's why.
That's why.
Yeah.
There's a starting, but there's
a top pay. You have your top pay, and then they have this, and there's a merit increase, which
don't have
they
merit.
should just take it out
we
because
don't have we have longevities and step money.
no one ever reaches it. So people see that and they ask you, how do you get there? And
How
it's
do you get
always
there?
just like,
I don't know.
You never get there. It's like you say a carrot that you never reach.
Right.
The carrot is always in front of the horse.
Right,
you
right,
never,
right.
You never
So
get
we're
it.
trying to get there.
That's every contract has one. I have a few in my contract also, and the members always ask, well, how do you get there? Well, it's a merit increase.
Whereas let me just say something to that. Excuse me. Whereas my colleagues in the outer counties reach their top salary, and they're probation officers like us, and we
They
have
don't
to
have the merit increase.
we don't have merit increases.
No,
We don't get them.
No, you're not going to get it.
No.
But the merit increase is in the contract, and you'll never see it. You just see the number there.
Okay.
So that's why I explain the merit increase. The number's there. You won't get it, but it's always there. So it would be better if they took the number out because nobody's going to get it. Then nobody sees the number.
Right.
But it's something that it's like candy you'll never be able to taste.
It's like teasing you,
Yeah.
right? Like dangling in your face.
Right. So tell me, what are some of the things that you want to achieve going forward?
I want us to get to the top salary. That's for one. I want to.
You got to have a way to get there.
Yeah, well, we're gonna figure it out. I have faith that it's gonna work out some kind of way. I want right now, like I'm doing now. I'm advocating for my members, but I'm also educating the community at large about the work that probation officers do, especially with this big thing about criminal justice reform and how we do play a significant role in the criminal justice reform, how we save the city and the state billions of dollars because we do exist, and that needs to be brought out. It's very discouraging that probation has been in existence in the 1800s when John Augustus brought it into in existence, the father of probation, and people are still getting us mixed up with corrections, parole, even in other agencies, and we're not standing out the way we should. Like I said, we're that piece of the puzzle that's forgotten, and we play such a significant role. We do so many things. And those reports that we do, that I was telling you about, the investigation reports, they stay with the individual throughout the whole system. Whether a person is placed on probation, is with them the whole time, or a person goes upstate, those reports goes to them with them before the parole board. So my goal is to get us for us to be recognized, for us to get the pay equity that I know that we deserve. Eventually, we're working on the pension reform for us, But
what's your retirement pension?
We have several ones. We have the Tier 4. Then you got the new people coming in with the Tier 6.
How many? 25 years?
No.
You don't have 25 years
That's what I'm trying to tell you. I'm trying to work. No, we don't.
Wow. Okay.
No, we don't. And I know what you're saying about certain things, but I can't.
No, I'm just asking.
No, but I'm just saying to you, I know what you're saying about the salaries and, whatever, but I don't see us, the mindset about probation has to change because we're not civilians. We're not civilians. We are law enforcement. We are officers. We do this. We carry, like I said, we walk around with vests in the street with bulletproof vests and radios, and we're not civilians. So I can't accept that. Oh, everybody doesn't get it. I want my people to get it because they deserve to get it, and we're risking our lives just like every other law enforcement officers in the street.
That's all the time we have for this segment of Reaching Out. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'll come back.
You come back.
Yes,
I hope this is a start to people understanding the role of a probation officer. I'm Gregory Floyd, President Local 237. Our very special guest was Dalvanie Powell, President of United Probation Officers Association. Thank you for coming on Reaching Out.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to Reaching Out with Gregory Floyd, president of Teamsters Local 237. Join us each and every Saturday night at 7, right here on AM 970, The Answer.